Hey guys, welcome to Happy Homelands. It is Wednesday, April 24th. And no, I'm not on Rumble tonight. And no, I didn't get in trouble with Rumble. This is unusual. Usually I skip YouTube, I have to skip a platform. But tonight I was trying to set up my stream on Rumble and it just hung and hung and hung. And I said, heck with this, heck with this. So I just set it up on YouTube and X. So tonight, no Rumble, but YouTube and X. So thank you guys for being here. I appreciate that. And yeah, if you're new to the show, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, I do the Ramsey Paul show at 11 a.m. Central. Typically go an hour and a half. I get into the news. We discuss it from our point of view and have a little bit of fun. And on Wednesday nights, I try to do Happy Homelands because there's a lot of people that can't join during the day, but they can in the evening. So I welcome you so you can be part of the live audience. And also, I don't want Happy Homelands just to be another news show. I try to deep dive into whatever topic I find interesting. Sometimes I will have guests. So that's kind of the purpose of the Happy Homeland show. I started Happy Homelands a few years ago with my host from Finland, Tina Vik, the late Tina Vik. Sadly, she passed too soon. Then I had Styx as my co-host, and then Sasha. And who knows? Maybe I'll have a co-host again in the future. We will see. But it's great to have you guys here. Thank you so much. Even though I am not on Rumble, I appreciate you all being here. All right. Let's see here. A few things. I don't have rants tonight because I'm not on Rumble, but I got super chats on YouTube. Powerchats, I love to get. And Stream Elements is a option instead of Powerchats. And as always, I encourage you guys to join my Gumroad. We do a lot of fun stuff. We have a roundtable every weekend and exclusive videos. So, okay, what do I get into tonight? What are we gonna? I decided to open a can of worms because I said, why not? Is something I was thinking about. There's been an eruption among the right wing girls on the internet. They're in an uproar, and there's various sides. You have Lauren Southern, you have Pearly Things, you have Rebecca, you have all these different types of people. And it's a civil war about what the role of women should be in politics and society, how they should behave. And then you have the men coming at it. And I just thought I'd discuss a little bit of the background and how did we get here and who's right and who's wrong. I mean, they're basically all right and wrong. It's weird how we got to this place. So I thought I would discuss that tonight. That's why it was like the cat fights, the internet cat fights. I will go through some of them, give you my perspective on this. All right, where do I start? I guess I'll start at the beginning. It's sort of funny because I started my career on YouTube mostly attacking feminism because I think feminism is an extremely destructive force. And I'm pretty hardcore. I don't think I don't think there should be the 19th Amendment. I think we should go back to the way it was before, where the household votes through the husband or through the father. There was reasons for these things. Like there was a reason homosexuality was illegal throughout most of human history. There's a reason. It's not just because of ignorance. And the same with voting. The Romans, they didn't allow women to vote. And it wasn't because they're full of hate. There was other reasons. And I see nothing wrong with the patriarchy. That I think there's a hierarchy. That's what it means to be right wing. God, man, woman, child. It doesn't mean your value, but that's a hierarchy. And so feminism was an inversion of that, and it had a lot of abuses. So a lot of my early videos were making fun of feminism. And one of my early viewers back in the day, I think she was in high school at the time, was a girl named Lauren Southern. And she liked my videos. She contacted me, talked to me. And then she started doing her feminism stuff, a lot based on my videos. And that's fine. I love being inspiration to people. And she really blew up because, she's a pretty young girl, especially back then. And guys, this is a weakness of ours, is if a pretty girl says something, even if it's sort of trite and bland, we tend to give it more weight. It's like, oh, a pretty girl is validating us. I think it's an evolutionary response. If we have a pretty girl, if a pretty girl has her idea, that somehow makes it valid. When I worked as a teenager I was a busboy, and in the restaurant, they always said pretty up front. Like the hostess was always the pretty girl. If you're kind of ugly, you went back to the kitchen. Maybe you're a waitress, but the prettiest young girls would be the hostess because that was the first impression people had. And it works. It really works. People are biased towards pretty girls. Now, when women get older and they lose their looks, they lose all that pretty quick. But for a period of time that they have that. So, which is okay. But the problem is sometimes we get women that are stating their position, especially young women, when they're not really that deep. And it's nothing wrong with that. Not everyone's a super intellectual, but they're really capitalizing on their looks. And again, it's not wrong to be attracted to pretty women. I am. I think most guys are, unless you're gay, you're attracted to pretty women. But the problem is when you confuse things and you assume because they're pretty, that gives them some bigger insight into the world. And then with the whole Lauren Southern arc, as you remember, she made a lot of money and became quite famous by doing, hey, I'm this pretty girl that's against feminism. And that's how she started, by the way. Kind of like I started. She watched my videos. She did her anti-feminism thing. And it was like, wow, a hot girl that's against feminism. And it really kind of took off. And then she got into the alt-right and all of that, got hooked up with Stefan Molyneux, worked with him, got pretty big, worked with Milo. And you guys know the whole story. And then things started to get bad on the alt-right. She was trying to moderate her views. And then she decided to get married and have a baby and drop out of this whole life of being on the internet, because that kind of was in her message, right? Women should be mothers and have kids and be wives. They shouldn't be an internet influencer or something like that. So she's like, yeah, I'm going to walk the talk. I'm going to leave this all behind. Coincidentally, that was the time she started to get deplatformed from everything. So she found a guy and she said, this is it. I'm gone forever. Then, yeah, a year later, she's back and her marriage is in shambles. And now she's a divorced woman with a child, a single mom. And, the old Lauren Southern would have made fun of single mothers. And so it's kind of interesting. And then her views changed. When she came back, it's like, okay, well, how do I come back? Because the alt-right has been really kind of toxic now. And I'll get into why that happened. But she tried to come back. Oh, I've kind of pivoted. I'm now a centrist or something like this, a more nuanced position. And she thought the left would maybe cozy up to her, but they didn't. They never forgive. They're extremely intolerant. So that's kind of where she is now. And now she's fighting against a lot of the incel red pill community, Andrew Tate, that type of thing. So that kind of spurred on all these internet fights. And then we have Pearly Things, who I never heard of before until she interviewed Nick Fuentes. And when I first saw her, I thought, well, she's trolling, but she's like a real anti-woman commentator. That's how she does her thing. She's not that attractive, but that's how she gets guys to really like her, is by bashing women. And then that gets all the women upset on the internet. So they all start catfighting with her and saying she's ugly and this and that. And they go back and forth. So that's kind of the situation now. But this brings up a bigger question. I don't want to just do about personalities. It's more of the concept of what is the role of women in society and how did we get to this place? And if you've been on the internet as long as I have, I've been on the internet before there was a web, right? Even before AOL, you did FTP, you went to bulletin boards, stuff like that. There wasn't a web, so not as many people were on. And the internet was interesting is because it had no filters and everyone could get on and share experiences. And that, in a sense, started a reaction against feminism. And There was basically a couple of ways this happened. There was what we would call the red pill community. And again, red pill, that just came from the movie, um, where, you have the red pill, the matrix. Red pill is the truth, the blue pill is the illusion. And the red pill just had to do with understanding the truth about women, not the illusion that Hollywood gives you, or your mom would give you, or your parents will give you, but the real truth, even though it may not be pleasant. And so you got to decide how to do. So that's how we got the term red pill. But you had basically a couple of camps in the red pill community. There was one camp that was sort of really angry, bitter, divorced men. And I don't say that as making fun of them, but a lot of men got together and said, well, wow, I mean, these courts aren't fair. Family courts aren't fair. You get wiped out in a divorce financially, and it's almost impossible to get custody. And you get these huge child support payments, and the mother can take the child support payments. She doesn't even have to spend them on the child. She can take vacations with her new boyfriend, and you better pay up, otherwise you're going to jail. So this astounded a lot of guys how this would happen. They'd get older, they'd work hard, have a couple of kids, then all of a sudden the wife is like, I just don't feel it anymore for you. I love you, but I'm no longer in love with you, and I gotta leave, live, breathe, and pray and search for myself. Then she's off banging some other dude and taking half your money and demanding child support and alimony from you. So that was an element early on, even before the web, of guys got together and they would have websites talking about this. Like there was a web, and before the web, they would have the bulletin boards, then the websites. This was before social media, so everyone created a website. One website was like American Women Suck, and then you had all these different type of people, and they were more involved with how marriage is a bad thing for men. You shouldn't do it. Women aren't trustworthy, especially Western women. That was the theme, and that was kind of their idea. And so a lot of them got involved, like politically, trying to help reform the courts, how biased they were against men. Others, they kind of started what became the men going their own way movement, saying, hey, you're a man. If you want sex, just go to a prostitute, or women aren't worth a relationship, it's too dangerous. So that was kind of one segment. Then you had another segment, like this guy Rolo. He's still in it. Most of this other segment now is gone. And that was the what we called the pickup artist segment. Originally, it was called the alt dot seduction. In the old bulletin boards, you had like alt dot sex was a famous one, but you had alt whatever, alt dot history, alt whatever. And it was this bulletin boards you could go to and read posts. Again, it was pre the web. And in the alt dot seduction bulletin board, guys would get together and they were like, well, what works for picking up women and seducing them? Because it's just not looks, because we see a lot of times good looking guys have troubles with women. And then you have some guys that may be average looking, but they're doing really well, let's say in a nightclub. And so they would share tips on what works, not what's supposed to work according to movies and Hollywood, but in reality, what works. And they were just sharing advice back and forth. And it became a game to them who could pick up the most women. At that time, this is before apps. There was no apps. So you went to nightclubs to pick up women, or bars, and they would share their stories. And they started to have a game with each other, who could pick up the most women. And then they would share what worked, what didn't work. And that's where you got the term. I don't know if you don't hear it much anymore, but it's called game. And that is just someone that was good at picking up women. And then from that, you had blogs of guys. They weren't anti-women per se, but they were more how to pick up women and have sex with them. Like Artiste, Chateau Artiste was a big one. Roosh, who is no longer part of the community anymore. He's dropped off the internet. He was part of that. And Rolo, who's still around in this, he was part of that. I think he had a blog called The Rational Male. I mean, there was quite a few of these guys that were part of this community. And then what happened over time is it became not free, because everyone just share free stuff and do blogs for free. But then you kind of had some grifters that understood they could maybe monetize it, make money. And there's a guy named Mystery, and some of these guys, they wrote a book about it. And I think Mystery, didn't he have like a TV show or something on VH1, how to pick up women? And he was a goofy looking guy. And, and then it became more and more a business. But eventually that kind of petered out because a lot of women got upset and they got deplatformed because, oh, this is sexist. You're just trying to pick up women. Because we had this weird view of sex with women. We go through these phases of being very libertine or being very puritanical. And that's kind of the phase we go through now, is like, oh, sex is good. Everyone should have sex. But then it's like, wait a minute, you're trying to pick up a woman and have sex? What? You're a pig. And so it goes through those phases, and the internet went through that phase, and so they started to ban these people. And there's a few left. I think this Rollo is all I know that's left. So that the red pill community really was two communities. There was the pickup artist community, and then there was the men's rights community, for a lack of a better word. And both of the communities, by the way, weren't necessarily toxic. Both had really good observations. Like, man, the danger of child support, and how all that works, and how the courts, while they officially say they're supposed to be equal, they're not. And pickup artists, they explain the women's nature, what really attracts them, which is not what your mom will say. It's not what a woman will tell you. And so they'll say, they'll all deny it, but it works. And so that is where that community came out of. And so then they attacked feminism. I mean, the pickup artists, they weren't necessarily conservative, like getting married. They just wanted to bang women. But they started to see that their positions were quite a bit different than the official feminist position of how women acted. And obviously the men's right group, that kind of went against feminism too. So the whole red pill community was loosely based on the right. And that's where it kind of got put into. And so it was interesting that way. So a lot of what became later on what we call the alt-right, a lot of it came out of those communities. It really did. There was a lot of overlap because of, well, how should society work? How should men and women have the roles, and that type of thing. And so I think that was an important point here. So that's kind of how it came forward. And then you got some women jumped on it because they saw they could get attention, or because it was, it's kind of, in a sense, it's interesting because what Pearly Things is doing now is sort of what Lauren Southern was doing 10 years ago. Lauren Southern was in the men's group, except Lauren was prettier. And she was like, oh, I'm pretty girl. I'm agreeing with your views. Look at me, notice me, send me money. And a lot of guys, they did that because they simp. They want to do that. Pearly Things is doing something similar now, although she doesn't really have the looks, but she's doing, hey guys, I'm on your side. Yeah, women really do suck. And so she tells men what they want to hear, that, it's not your fault you don't have a girlfriend. It's the women's fault. It's a women's fault. So that created some of the intersex toxic behavior. That's how it was built up over time. And a major thing that happened, because a lot of the red pill stuff I think was really good, because it was kind of pushing back on feminism and showing more of the nature of how things should be. But then what happened is sort of like the alt-right was just originally, it was more paleo and conservative positions that most of our ancestors would have had. It wasn't radical. It wasn't Nazism or anything like that. It was, let's keep jobs in America. Let's not get into foreign wars. Let's put America first. We have a right to our homeland like all other people do. We have a right to control immigration. Let's go back, and instead, let's don't push homosexuality in schools. Let's don't push feminism. So it hit on basically traditional values. That really was the alt-right. But then it got co-opted. You got people like from the Daily Stormer and Andrew Anglin said, no, 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 the alt-right's about Nazism. You know, he'd have swastikas, everything, and it's about going after minorities and, and all that type of stuff. And they really pushed that. A lot of people, at least some people, grabbed onto that, and you weren't allowed to criticize. Oh, don't punch right. And then, you know, the history, what happened, and it all blew up at Charlottesville. And then right after there, at that time, the Daily Stormer and Andrew Anglin, yeah, he immediately did a 180 pivot. So, oh, no, 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 no. I think being a Nazi is cringe. The real problem is not that one group, it's women. Women are the real problem. And women, they're good to have babies, but that's it. That's all they're good for. I mean, it's gay to even love a woman or be in a relationship with a woman. They're just to put out babies. And after they're about 24, they really have no worth except for raising the kids. And you know, and I get some of this stuff because a lot of this stuff, there's a difficulty in determining, is it trolling? Is it trying to be funny, transgressive, just to be funny? Or is it serious? And the problem is some people do take it seriously. And Nick Fuentes was a fan of Andrew Anglin. He read Gamer Uprising Forum. That's where he wrote a lot of the stuff. And Nick got a lot of this idea that, yeah, you're right, women are the problem. And then so Nick has these views of women that, well, they're just to, you know, sex is just to have babies with, nothing else. And women are kind of gross and you don't really want to be around them. And obviously, not only should they not vote, but I mean, they shouldn't really do anything, right? And that was his line. And then they started, like the Daily Stormer, they came up with this white Sharia. Sharia is the Islamic law where women have to be in the burqa and they can't drive and all that type of stuff. You can beat them. And they were like, yeah, we need that, but for white people. That's how we need to take care of our women. And again, you could say a lot of this was supposed to be tongue in cheek, not real. But on the internet, a lot of people took it real. And they start saying, yeah, that's how our dynamic should be with women, which is not historical Western. Islam is not our tradition. Christianity is. And so the idea that we should adopt Islamic practices is, wait a minute, what are you doing here? This has nothing to do with who we are as a people. It never has been. Even when you go back to the Greeks and the Romans, you know, we didn't have this view. And so it's a really alien view trying to be put on us on the right. So it was very similar to the way the original alt-right was. If you wanted self-determination, if you wanted your own homeland, if you wanted all these good things that I think you can defend, you had a group that said, no, 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 you can't have that. If you have that, you're Nazis and you need to embrace Nazism. That's what it is, which is a toxic point of view. And I'm not getting through historical Nazism, but the way it is perceived now it is considered a negative. So they were attaching a huge negative to something that was positive, right? So it's a way to discredit something. And I think the same thing was done in male-female relations, whereas there was a positive, really real looking at the roles of men and women. What should the role of a woman be? And going away from this stupid feminism that women are better than men, they can boss around men, and women never lie. Believe all women. If you ask a girl out for a date and they don't want to, that's like rape, and just all this hysterical bullshit that was being pushed back on, that really both men and women on the right could agree on. But then they're like, no, 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 that's not what it means to be right wing and to be anti-feminist. Anti-feminist means women are just good to be breeders. They're just there to pop out babies. They need to pop out more white babies, be mothers, and just shut up. That's all they should do. And so you had this weird view of it where most of European culture, even if you go back to the Romans and Greeks, didn't have that view of women. So they're putting an alien view of women, trying to attach it to in order to make it toxic. So now we have a situation very similar to the alt-right, where it was a movement when, like I discussed it, I wrote an article on Return of the Kings. It was a pretty good article. I was explaining what the alt-right was, is all this positive stuff, right? And I said, it's not the neo-Nazism bullshit. This is what it is. But then when it got associated with neo-Nazism, people that would otherwise be sympathetic towards it, they're like, oh no, Nazism, I can't be associated with that. So they just reject it. And that's the same way on right. When you're talking about the proper roles of men and women, you could talk about things that really make a lot of sense and how to reform family law and various things to be like, oh no, what this means is white Sharia, that women, they should be in burqas and they should be locked away in cages and just be make babies. That's all they should do. And then a lot of women, and you see this right now, this is the phase we're in. They're like, oh my God, if that's what the right is, I don't want to be part of the right, because the right, they want to put you in cage and make me wear a burqa and beat me and just make me have babies. That's all that my function is. And so it's a way to poison pills something that is otherwise good. So that's kind of the situation we're in right now. Oh, I got a power chat from Tony. Thank you. Rams, is a power dynamic that right women constantly threaten to leave the right and go left wing if online men tweet cruelly at them? Left wing women have their life ended in Baltimore. Next election, vote Democrat again. Yeah, I see what you're saying, Tony. And there is that dynamic, and this is mostly women. If they talk about politics in an intelligent fashion, and I love good-looking women, so I'm not against good-looking women talking politics, but you got to evaluate really what they're saying. Are they saying really pretty good things? Like I follow Laura Chen. I think she's pretty, but I don't care about that. She says interesting things. Same with Michelle Malkin. Ann Coulter says some interesting things. But if all you're doing is just repeating basic bitch points, except you're showing your tits, that's a problem. And girls that get that attention, they easily will flip one way or the other. And there shouldn't be much attention as we as men. I wish I could tell men not to think with their dicks all the time. And it's fine if you want to look at a girl and go, oh, wow, she's hot. I'm going to put my wee-wee in her. Okay, I get that. But don't make it then, because of that whatever she says, that somehow validates your opinion or anything. Because your opinion, mostly these girls, whatever their opinions are, should be really kind of irrelevant. I mean, why should anyone care what Lauren Southern thinks? And I don't mean that meanly on Lauren Southern, but she's not of an intellect like an Ann Coulter, Michelle Malkin, or Ayn Rand. And some people hate her, I get it, but she's not. She's not stupid, but she's an average girl. And the only reason she has is a look. So what should you care one way or the other what she thinks about anything? I don't. I don't feel validated if she says her views. I don't get all butthurt if like now she wanted, let's say, go left wing. I don't care. I don't really put much credence into what these girls do or say. And a lot of guys, unfortunately, they do, because they find these girls to be attractive. So they mix that all up. And I wish, guys, if I could give you an advice, don't feel bad about finding a girl attractive. We all do. But don't let that influence your views or the way you look at things. Or there have been some women in my life that have been very intelligent, and I listen to them about what they say politically. But just because someone's cute, that doesn't mean anything on that. And so that's the problem we get a lot. Usually when I have these women commentators, I don't really care about them. If I find them attractive, I just, whatever. And I think people put too much time into all this, like, oh, how do we get women on our side? Well, you get women on your side by winning, right? If you win, women will follow you. That's typically what women do. I mean, there's some exceptions, but that's how it happens, right? That's why everyone asks. There was just a poll out recently. It was really amazing that the biggest demographic that votes Democrat is unmarried women, not married women. That's an interesting point, the unmarried women. Because women, they tend to conform to either the husband, if they're not married, their husband's estate or the establishment. And the establishment now is heavily left wing. So that's what women do. And I don't see any reason to get mad about it, butthurt about it, complain about, oh, why do women do that? I'm so mad at women. It's like, why do you get mad at someone that's their nature? I don't see the point in it. It's just ridiculous. So don't get all butthurt, like let's say if Lauren Southern, I'm not saying she is, but let's say she becomes a leftist. I don't care. I want to care. It wouldn't change my views at all. And I want to get upset. I want to get bitter at all women or anything like that. So I think that is the way to sort of deal with that. So, all right, let's take a look at a few of these comments here. And I want to go over this because I have various people. And here's this a clip from Lauren Southern. And I don't think Southern's really her last name, but that's okay. Here we go.
Supposed to be better than this. We used to lambast societies where women couldn't vote or get educated, and now these influencers see that shit and think, yes, perfect. Burqas for everyone, multiple wives, all of them illiterate. I don't want to be able to have a conversation with a single woman. Love it.
Well, and again, this is a little bit of a straw man because this isn't a traditional value. You want stupid women and women should never work. I don't know where that came about. Women have always worked, at least in the home in many places. My grandmother worked in a corporation. I don't understand this. But so these guys, they got this weird LARPy view of what it means to be a traditional woman, which isn't historical. And then you get people, Lauren, and they get like the Andrew Anglin, Nick Fuentes. And Nick Fuentes, whatever you think about him, why would you take relationship advice about women, about a guy? I don't think he's ever kissed a girl in his life. And I don't mean that as an insult to him. I honestly don't think he ever has. That'd be like me giving golf advice. I've never golfed in my life, but all of a sudden I give golf advice. That would seem kind of weird, but this is kind of where we are right now. But you get people like Lauren Southern here, and I don't know if she knows better or she's doing this for views, but obviously most men on the right don't take that extreme Fuentes Anglin view that women are worthless except to have babies. They just need to shut up. They shouldn't learn to read. That is crazy, and all that does is discredit the right. But she can say, oh, well, that's the right then, so I don't want to be part of it.
And the reason our society is better, and why myself and so many others defended the West back in the day, is because everyone was educated, men and women. Women literally educate our children. We get dumber men when women aren't educated. And this is the reason everyone wants to come to our society. Because
right. There's nothing wrong with women being educated. That's our school teachers were primarily like on the prairie, Little House on the Prairie. Do you guys ever watch that? They were women that were educated. So obviously women should be educated.
As it is more intelligent, more literate. People are more capable of engaging and building community. Women and men who are higher educated, way less likely to divorce, way less likely. And that family unit, so integral. And yet we want to go back in time instead, go back to the Stone Age, to the values of the people who are literally escaping those countries to come here because it's created such shit cultures. The left imported all of this. I don't want to hear a bo peep from them about the sexism of young British boys. They did this. And now you've got all of these new influencers on the right that say I've changed. I've become some sort of feminazi now, that I shouldn't be critiquing any of this, that I shouldn't even be online at all, commenting on politics whatsoever. Let me tell you right now, I have not changed on this subject one bit. Not one bit. But what has changed is there has been an influx of new demographics.
Her hair color's kind of changed. I noticed that.
With intolerant ideologies who right-wing influencers are trying to appeal to. Because there's just as much money in mass migration to be made from the left as there is in the right. And they want to make sure that money's making its way around to everyone, including themselves. So to make this clear, millions more people with different ideologies come into our countries, and that becomes millions more people to make money off of, on super chats, on events, everything. Who cares about morals? Who cares what right wing actually thought 10, 15 years ago? There is money to be made.
All right, this is I'm just watching. This is a really a stupid take from her. The people on the right, I don't know anyone on the right like Nick Fuentes that holds this view that wants to increase mass immigration because that will give them more super chats or something. I mean, that's just kind of stupid. I don't. That's a dumb take from her point of view.
You're gonna have sex with any guy they want to.
You're supposed to have sex with him whenever he says.
Women simply just don't care too much about the bitch.
Perfect example that you can be dumb as a girl and make it through life.
What? No.
What did you say? Fuck the woman, fuck the woman.
If your dad cheated on your mom, how would you feel?
I'd applaud him. I'd be like, fuck yeah, you got your money up, man. I think if you're in a serious relationship with a girl, she should not have an Instagram. That's cheating.
Men don't really need a woman.
Can't divorce, and that's not a real.
Well, Steven Crowder said there, and I'm not a Steven Crowder fan, but not all men need a woman. The Apostle Paul was never married. Jesus was never married. So that's too many times. This is a problem. You need to be in. My advice to young guys is never be in a situation where you need a woman, ever. I don't want to ever be in that situation. I mean, I'm with Sasha, love her, happy I have her, but it wasn't based on being needy. Need this. You shouldn't need that. You should be independent on your own. So what Steven Crowder said there, I don't find objectionable.
Even though it might be like physically abusive.
You gotta endure.
I recently decided that women shouldn't vote.
Oh, I might like family more than you. So much I have 5.
I'm doing this for money. It's all about money to me.
Yeah. I did a video about the 19th Amendment, and I took it down long ago, but there's a reason the family voted. It's not a woman. So, and so that started this, and this is, and then we got the Andrew Tates and all these, and then we got the incels, and the incels are sort of a little bit new. These are people that are involuntarily celibate. And I guess these were the guys, because the whole pickup artist thing, it wasn't a scam. There was some good advice, but a lot of guys, they just can't do it. I mean, you just can't radically change people. People can change somewhat, but there's some people you just, they're not going to do it, or they don't take the advice anyway, right? Like, one advice is don't be too needy with a woman. Don't text her a million times a day. And you could tell some guys that don't do that. But then immediately when they get a girl, they're going to text her a million times because they're very needy. So it doesn't work. And these guys, they don't get girlfriends and get really bitter. So we get this whole incel type of thing. And I think that is a mistake. Robert, $5. Peggy McIntosh was a teacher in 1988 who put forth White Privilege and Male Privilege, a personal account of coping to see correspondence through work in women's study. Is the issue women put these ideas forth more? K through 12 education. Well, mostly no. Cultural Marxism, almost all intellectual ideas, I can't think of one that was started by a woman ever. So all these ideas, whether Marxism, cultural Marxism, all of these ideas, capitalism, libertarianism, they're all dominated by men. Then women come along. So teachers, teachers are very conformists that follow the rules, that follow the establishment, whatever the establishment is. So I don't really blame women for that. Real truth. What Lauren isn't saying is that marriage and having families is becoming less common in the dying middle class and the working class. Is slowly becoming only the upper class. What she isn't saying, I don't know. Lauren isn't saying that. If she isn't saying that, she should say that, because that is a problem. Because marriage has to be the foundation of a civilization. That's what brings forth children. That's why this whole idea, don't get married because there's too many risks. Well, but that's the foundation of civilization. If you get rid of marriage, you just we look like Africa in the jungle. So marriage is the most important thing, is informing families, even though there's risk involved with that. And you're right, it's starting to break down. We're starting to see the dysfunction for that. So Real Truth, thank you so much for that point. I really do appreciate that. All right, so let's see what else. And then I'm going to get at some of these other girls too in these cat fights, but I'm almost done with the Lauren part, but we'll take a look here. So let's just see here. Let's see here. So she's kind of going on a lot about this stuff. A lot of this is a little bit delusional, like the whole 19th Amendment thing. There's a couple of reasons. There's some reasons you can have an intellectual discussion about something, even though it's not going to be implemented anytime soon. And this is what she's saying here. I'm not going to partake in this quote defund the police tier commentary around the 19th Amendment. She's just saying, well, I'm not going to have the conversation because it's not practical or whatever. And she's right in this sense. The 19th Amendment is not going to be repealed in the current version of the United States. Now, the United States will break apart, I believe, and not too distant. I don't think next year or 5 years from now, but within 30, 40 years, it will break apart and we'll get new countries. And so a lot of these ideas, they have some use as an intellectual thought experiment of how do we, and this is where I think we need to spend a lot of our time in the next 20, 30 years, is what we want our next society to look like. Lessons learned. How did we get in this situation? Who do we need to exclude from our societies? How can we make our societies healthy? And then we can start talking about that and have that discussion. So we have that discussion, not that there's going to be a change now, because the United States is like the Titanic after it hit the iceberg. It's at that point, it's over. It's just a matter of time till it sinks. You can't save the ship. We're not saving America. I don't care if Trump miraculously should become president. He's not going to save America. It's just got too bad. We're past the point of no return. But the good news is the country will break apart. We will get new countries in the future. We may not see them, or I won't, but hopefully our ideas can help influence the next generation of when they set things up, what to do, what not to do. So in some ways, this is not really relevant at the point. Like if you're running for president, I wouldn't worry about the 19th Amendment because you're president of the Titanic. It's going down anyway. It's like debating the menu on what should we have, what should be the menu be like on going forward on the Titanic. Well, there is no going forward. So what does it matter? Well, maybe on another ship it matters. And that's the way we are at this point. It doesn't really matter at this point to get hooked up into all these on a immediate conversation where in politics. So this shouldn't be an issue for Trump or anything like this. This should happen. All right. Let me see here. Before I show this tweet, I want to go one here. This was Rebecca, and I like her. I've had her on Happy Homelands, by the way. Blonde in the Belly of the Beast, I think she used to go by, or maybe she still does. I feel partially responsible for radicalizing people in 2016 through 18. This was a movement. A lot of the women, like Rebecca, she says she was partly responsible for this, trying to reinvent, the 50s housewife type of thing. I think it was largely bad for both men and women. Here's what I have learned since getting married and having kids. And again, I got to chuckle a little bit. So she's basically saying before she was married or had any kids, she was giving advice how this should all work. But once she's married and has kids, that's all out the window now. There's a lot of truth to that. It's like someone's never had kids. They can tell you how to raise kids and be an expert on it. And when they've never had one. But once they have one, yeah, it's interesting. Or it's kind of like race relations. It's funny. People in the South are raised around, let's say, blacks. They have they have encounters with them. They understand it. And we would get lectured by people who never see a black their whole life, but they would tell us all about them. Like, oh, this is interesting. Europe was kind of that way. I'm like, oh, okay. And so it is kind of interesting. I have to kind of chuckle a little bit about that. The best situation for families and married couples is typically one that allows both parents to engage in family life, that reduces financial stress in the family, and allows both the man and the woman to flex their strength. Typically, this is a man being the primary earner, but when a woman can bring some money to the table while still doing the majority of childcare, it is hugely helpful to the family. It is. And this is why, and I've already given you my credential. I'm like the original gangster anti-feminist. I was the original one on YouTube. I influenced a lot of people. So that's where I'm coming from. And I'm still that perspective. But this idea that if you're a woman, you can't work, it's just ridiculous. So I knew this woman. I'm not going to say who she is, but she said, "Hey, Paul, don't tell anyone, but I have a job." She's married. I'm like, well, why is that bad? But there's such a like, oh, if you're a woman, you can't work. If you're working, there's something wrong with you. You should be home with a family and be a housewife. Men have to help with a woman's work based on how much women bring to the table financially. This may have a negative effect on their sex life. Women report reduced attractiveness to mates taking on feminine duties. But there are only so many hours in the day, and it's the only way that resentment for asymmetric work contribution doesn't destroy the marriage. So this is interesting. Rebecca's posting this on X. I wonder if this is kind of reflecting her situation. But yeah, this is a situation. A lot of times women, they take care of the children, then they start to resent their husbands for not doing their share of the housework. But this kind of a catch-22 because the guys do the housework and then the woman sees the guy as kind of a bitch and then she has an affair. So there's a lot of issues here with that. But in a healthy relationship, you do have a division of labor and you're both helping each other. And if I could give any advice, and I've been in a lot of failed relationships. I've been in kind of the opposite of Nick Fuentes. I've kissed too many girls. I could tell you probably the best thing in a relationship advice I could give to a man and a woman is always try to put the other person first. And don't try to look at it as you're trying to get stuff out of them, then you give them stuff and it needs to be 50-50. Don't look at it that way. Do stuff even though it may not thrill you because it makes the other person happy. So maybe that's not red pill. You shouldn't try to make your wife happy. I'm saying you should. And a wife, she should try to make her husband happy. I know feminism tells her, no, you shouldn't try to make your husband happy, but you should. I mean, there's things you do that I may not be thrilled with, like Sasha. It's not my thing, but I do. And I'm not bitter about it because I enjoy being with her, and vice versa. I start talking about stuff Sasha has no interest in, but she, likes to talk to me. That's what you have to do. And I think this is a way to do it. She also discouraged people from going to college, which I'm not sure was good advice. While it can turn girls into sluts, well, but girls that don't go to college, it's not like they're chaste, right? And it's possible the radicalization is high for both men and women. But people tend to mate up based on who they are with, right? And so that's it. And education level, again, college I think is okay if you're a female or a male, is if it's going into a degree that's going to help you. But a lot of people really shouldn't go to college. Why are you going to college to get a communication degree just to work at Starbucks? That's stupid. Basically, what I thought before I got married and had kids was based on how I thought things should be and not how they are. This is a really interesting statement Rebecca has said. So Rebecca, she was giving all this advice based on, she shouldn't be giving advice. And I don't blame Rebecca. Just like Nick Fuentes has no business giving relationship advice because he's never had a girlfriend. This doesn't make any sense. Rebecca really shouldn't have been giving advice about marriage and child rearing if she's a single woman. This is why you have older women that should give advice that have been through the situation. But now she realized most of her advice was kind of bullshit because while she thought that was cool, that the woman should do something and have to clean up around the house. I'm not sure, Rebecca, I'm kind of reading into this. She probably gets mad at her husband not doing his part around the house. And her idea of theoretically, the strong alpha male not doing that. While that sound good in theory is probably not working out in reality. Now my belief system largely revolves around behavior that reduces divorce rate and destruction of white families. If that means that things need to look a bit different than I expected or even I desire, then so be it. Well, I mean, that's life, guy. That's life, is just to understand we don't live in tropes. And while the 50s housewife, first of all, that was a trope. 50s women did work. My grandmother worked in the 50s. 50s women had sex. I know you guys don't believe it, but they did. We're not that much different, especially when you read history. When I was reading about the Romans, they had sex, they had affairs, women could control their husbands. They did that a lot. There's really nothing new under the sun. As I get older, I see that. But people, they have this fantasy version of stuff. So the important thing is to get someone you're compatible with, that you love, that they love you, and then you can work together through these issues. And it's not being so rigid, like I'm the alpha male, bitch, you do what I say. Most women aren't going to put up with that. But don't get me wrong, you don't want to be in a situation where the woman is like wearing the pants, telling you what you can do and what you can't do. That's dysfunctional too. Let's see here. California Tune. They have made marriage too expensive, too risky for men, and education beats into women that there's nothing worse or lower than a housewife, not an accident. Yeah, I was just thinking about this. Someday I may put this down, the Ramsey Paul kingdom. If the reason I think of the low birth rates, here's my theory. Everyone's trying to figure out the reason for the low birth rates, because it's just not in white countries, it's Asians too. I think what it is women, they go into the work, they want to do, let's say, become a doctor or a lawyer. Let's say lawyer, right? So you go to college to get your law degree. Then once you get out of college, that's your early 20s. That's when you're the most fertile as a woman. And there's nothing we can do about it. That's nature. Don't blame me. Blame God or nature. Don't blame me. That's just life. In the 20s, you get pregnant easier as a woman, and your babies are probably going to be healthier. Now, you can still get pregnant like in your 40s, but it's not as likely. And there's more likely there's going to be something wrong with the child. It can happen. You can have a baby, but it's not as likely, right? So what happens, though, a lot of women, what they do is kind of their life plan is, oh, well, I'm just out of college. I'm just now working for this firm. I really don't have time because I'm married, but I don't have time to take off time, to raise kids, because I just started my career. I'm going to do that when I'm in my 30s, when I get situated. Then I will have kids, take maternity leave. So women are delaying childbirth. And then when they get in their 30s, a lot of women, I'm really shocked how many women don't understand their own biology. I really am. The idea that women don't understand that they can get pregnant easier in their 20s than they can in, let's say, in their 30s or 40s. These are intelligent women. Intelligent women, they're like, what? No, I know. I had Aunt Mary Sue got married at 40. Well, that happens, but that doesn't invalidate what's the norm. But they really don't. They don't understand that for some reason, but it's true. So they wait till their 30s, and they try, and maybe they eke out one kid, right? If that. And so that's part of the problem. So what needs to happen is that needs to be inverted. And how I would invert that is if you got married when you're married as a woman, and for every child that you have that's under 5 years old, you get paid equal to your husband. The state would pay you. So if you're not working, so you'd get as much, you basically get equivalent of your husband's salary to raise your young kids under the age of 5. And then once you have children, let's say, but they're over the age of 5, and you want to go into law school, you want to go into your career, I would give preferential treatment to those women over young women. So that way it would encourage young women in general, in their life script to be in their 20s, have their babies, and then they can do their career stuff in their 30s, 40s, 50s. And so we need to flip that incentive. So I really think that's the problem there. California Tune. My great grandmother, born in 1895, told me she was not a fan of women getting the vote and that she was around when it happened. Yeah, when I did that story about the 19th Amendment, the video, I actually, well, the people argue against it. And I read this argument back then of a woman that argued against it, saying that it would divide families. Because what does it make sense if you have a family, the man votes one way, the woman does the other, kind of divides the family, it splits the vote. The family should vote in unison, and the man as the head of the family should cast the vote. Now, obviously, based on the influence of the wife, and in Roman societies, this is how it happened. Women always have had a lot of influence over people. This idea they're just doormats is stupid. Women have a lot of influence. They always have. So, yeah, thank you, California Tune. Johnny Rams, the OnlyFans girls thing seemed to anger men more at women. Women have no avenue to easy money such as OnlyFans girls do. Hence, health and fitness, Nala girls seem to start this whole thing. Online right men hate her, the woman defended. I think I'm gonna paraphrase this. I'm sorry I read this poorly. But Johnny, I think to understand this OnlyFans things, yeah, a few women can make a lot of money in OnlyFans. But if you look at the statistics, yeah, you have some women that make like $5 million a month. I know it's horrible. Here, $5 million a month. Look at my butthole. It's sick. But guys are doing that. Guys are enabling this by paying these prostitutes to do it. So the men, before you start getting mad, if you are paying for an OnlyFans, you're enabling this behavior. But having said that, most women that are in OnlyFans average like $58 a month. So most women really don't have that option. And women with their looks, it's just a very, very short time they have to really capitalize on their looks, especially something like in modeling or in prostitution, or most like Playboy models were under the age of 24. It's really rare to be over the age of 24 and be like a Playboy model. It's from like 18 to 24 is like prime looks for a woman. So they have a very, very brief time to capitalize on that. So I wouldn't get really bitter about those women. And for one reason, men enable it. Joseph, do these divides happen as much with other races? Was feminism spread among blacks or Asians at all? Oh, yeah, big time. Feminism is a big issue in Korea and Japan. Why does it only seem to exist on whites? Your views of race versus sex in terms of politics. I think it's in other races too. I don't think it's just our people. I think it's just in general. And it depends how you define feminism, right? And what's bad, like I think women should be able to work, that they should be able to learn to read, they should go to school, they should be able to drive. I couldn't hardly tolerate a woman that didn't drive. I mean, good grief, I'd have to drive her everywhere. No, but if you call that all feminism, then I disagree. So yeah, it depends how you define these terms. So thank you. Okay, so that was anyway, Rebecca had a interesting quote here. And she has another one about a husband not doing his stuff in the house. Rebecca, is your husband picking up around the house? I bet he's leaving the toilet up. Not being a mind reader is the male cover for weaponized incompetence and passive aggressive behavior. I can guarantee that what happened here is that he was pissed off. She went out and left him with these duties. So he made sure she knew it. If she ever did it again, and would it be worth it? So what happened is husband put the baby to sleep 4 hours early and ruined everything. Baby has a pretty standard routine now. He goes down at 9 p.m., 10 p.m. to sleep through to 8 a.m., which is perfect for us. This is something I never knew until I had kids, is how hard kids are and how they scream at night. And they're not like TV or the movies. Raising kids is not, there's a lot of joy to it, but it's not easy. It really isn't. It really totally changes your life. So if you're a young couple and you don't have kids and everything's carefree, you go to movies, you take a spontaneous trip somewhere. Once you have babies, that's not happening. It totally changes it. And people that have young children, they always look really, women especially, look very tired and haggard. It takes a lot out of you. So yesterday I went out at night to have some me time. Oh, that's kind of a red flag. I don't know what me time is. My husband decided at 5 o'clock without dinner or bath, our son was tired and rocked him to sleep. Then he put him in bed. So basically her husband put the kid to sleep early. And then it woke up when she got home and she was up all night. She's pissed off at her husband. And kids are very, very stressful, and kids are very hard on a marriage. That's something they don't really tell people. But if you have a bad marriage, having children will not help it. It'll just make it worse because everything gets worse with kids. And I have 2 kids. I love them. But initially it gets worse because babies are very demanding and it's very difficult. And if you have troubles with your wife or your spouse, babies aren't going to help. Dylan, $5. I just want to enable your behavior. Also, women give mind readers a bad name. Yeah, that's Dylan's a great supporter. Thank you, Dylan. That is funny. Yeah, that is sometimes, but women do sometimes that because they think that men should just magically be able to read their minds. And so women can, sometimes men are pretty direct. You just have to tell them. Otherwise, they're not going to figure it out. And I don't know if this guy was being passive aggressive. He probably, was just trying to get the kid to sleep. So, okay. And then, since I'm on Rebecca, I'll comment on something else she said here. Women that don't want children are the sworn enemy of younger women. No, Rebecca, just because you have children doesn't mean women that don't want children are the enemy of younger women. There's reasons people may not want children. Some women may realize that they shouldn't have children or they're not good with kids, and that's perfectly reasonable. This is a very private matter. And if I could really tell people is, unless you're like the mother-in-law or the mother, which most guys aren't, right? Don't ask a woman, when are you going to have more babies? That's a very personal subject. That's extremely rude to ask a woman, like, when are you going to have another baby? Don't ever ask that. It's really, it's weird. It's like somebody would even go there. Don't do that, right? That's something the grandmother asks or something, not you. They don't understand the essence of femininity if they don't want children, and don't understand the hero's journey of childbirth and child rearing if they don't have them. All right. We've had, like, I don't know how many babies have been born in the human race. I don't know how many people have ever lived. 20 billion? I don't know. So if 20 billion people have done it, Rebecca, it's not a hero's journey, right? It's a natural process. You're not a hero because you have a baby. It's been done many times before. If you go into a burning house and rescue someone, you're a hero. Having a baby doesn't make you a hero. Dogs have babies. Well, they have puppies. They're not heroes. That's just common. Young women have much in common with Pearl as they do with feminists of yesterday. Oh, she was responding to Pearl. And Pearl makes her living out of trolling these ladies. I don't even think Pearl is necessarily always legitimate. And she says, ladies, this year you will realize I'm not your enemy. Rather, I have been the only one being honest where the feminists, bitter women, and simps are lying to get something out of you. Well, there's some truth to that. There's a lot of those. Midnight Sun, $5. Did you hear the news about AFPAC 4? Keith Woods, Lucas Gage, and Jared Taylor will attend. Will you attend as a VP guest or a speaker? No, I'm not going to attend. I wish all those guys well. I was never that fan of Keith Woods. He used to be Richard Spencer's butt boy, and Keith Woods, because Richard Spencer, because I wasn't radical enough for him, so he started to attack me. And when Keith Woods was his butt boy, he had Keith Woods to try to attack me. So I guess him and Spencer and Keith Woods have had their little spat, though. Lucas Gage, but I've never met Keith Woods. He's Irish, which is interesting with their crime laws there. Lucas Gage, I have met Lucas. Angelo Gage, he used to go by Angelo Gage. He's a good guy. I really like him. He kind of got into that one subject though and just focused on that. But he's good. And Jared Taylor is brilliant. Yeah. So yeah, good guess there. I hope they do well. Will you attend as a VP guest or speaker? Nah, I don't really think politics like this are really. I don't know. It's just not my thing, really. I'm not a politician. I offend people. Like probably this video will offend a lot of people on either side, right? Because I don't know. Some Lawrence Southern simps will probably be mad at me, but then I also defended Lawrence Southern, so I don't know. And then same with Rebecca. I like a lot of her stuff. I push back on some stuff, so that gets some people mad. I don't know. And so interesting. No, so well, good for that. I hope they have a good time there. And I don't know if I'd ever do a conference anymore. They were a lot of fun, but I think I'm not really quite sure I would do that anymore. Let's see here. Row House Rams back in 2004. Stephen Saylor documented Utah had a white birth rate of 2.45 per couple. Is this acceptable to you? Is 2.2 is considered a replacement? No one says it has to be 5 kids or something. I've always said this over and over, Row House. The key thing is to have our self-determination, have our own homelands. So if we have our own homelands, we don't have to get into a baby race. And as I describe, I think there's a way to encourage women to have babies sooner. I think we should reward that. And women that choose to have babies sooner, we should give them priority once they're older to go to school and in education, do what they want, so they don't have to they got it inverted. They wait till they have babies. They should have babies in their 20s and then do the professional thing in their 30s and 40s. But it's kind of opposite now. So I'm for ways to help that. But at the same time, like I'm not a perpetual growth guy. Eventually we run out of room. And it's not on an individual level. It's every couple. That's a very personal decision. Some people, wife with a purpose. She had like 9 kids. God bless her. Some people choose not to have other kids. God bless them. It's not for me to tell them how many children they need to have. So that's that. K-Max McDonald. Hey, Rams. Your view of the just joining with the mainstream right anymore. I don't join anything, but okay. TPUSA posted third-party groups. Stephen Miller, America First legal groups. Third-party white groups are just not allowed and not practical. I'd always be careful of groups that you join, because I'm not saying don't, but you just have to understand a lot of them will be there will be feds in there trying to frame you. But do what you want type of thing. Mainstream groups can be okay. I'm not a group guy though, to be honest. So it's I'm a bad person to ask for that, because I'm not a political creature. I'm really not. I'm not one to glad hand people, slap them on the back and try to get a coalition. I just like to state my views, have fun. I'm not really, and I don't mean that I'm trying to be humble. I'm just not a politician. It's just not my thing. But thank you for that. All right. Let's see what else we got here. Did I have some more? I think I have some more about this. So, I agree with this lady. I followed her. She's like this. I just happened to heard her because she had a X post that went viral. I think she's Japanese ethnicity. Diane Yap. If your child can't reliably obey the command quiet, they don't belong in public spaces where they can bother others, especially planes. If you subject the public to them anyway, you're an inconsiderate person and you don't deserve to be part of civilized society. This created a big uproar. See, Japanese, they train their kids quite well to how to behave. And to be fair, white families used to do that too. When I was younger, we didn't allow kids to just run around scream. Of course, back then you could spank kids and the government wouldn't get on you. So you didn't commit, you wouldn't have a tantrum, scream at the grocery store or at the store because you didn't get a toy. If I did that, I would get an ass whooping by my mom and then my dad. So it just wouldn't happen. Whereas kids today, because of, you can't punish your kids, they're just little monsters. And I understand that. I do not like kids for the most part where they're screaming, carrying on. Children need to learn how to obey and learn how to behave properly. And a lot of people got mad at Diane, but she's right. A lot of children are just out of control now. And that is the problem. So, yeah, I found that interesting, but that created a big issue there. And here we have JF. He had a statement. JF Garippy. I wonder if he ever found Mama JF. What happened to Mama JF? What happened? We don't know. She just disappeared and she's never going to be seen again. Recently, quote, right-wing women have complained about right-wing internet environment being hostile to them, abuse, blah, blah. My 2 cents on this question is that women are incapable of being right-wing thinkers or right-wing speakers by their biological nature. Well, that's not true. Michelle Mock can, Ayn Rand, even though she wasn't right-wing, but she was political, Ann Coulter. So I don't necessarily agree that. You can see this in their very complaint, which is templated on left-wing victimization culture, creating spaces that are welcoming, whatever. Yeah, well, I mean, that is some truth to that. I don't think if women are going to get involved online or in politics, that you have to understand or they got to toughen up and they can't cry victim if someone says something mean to them, because you always are going to get stuff mean to them. I'm not going to read his whole thing, but he's basically saying women are mostly grifters in this space. And a lot of it's true. They do it to get attention or money or fame. And it's sort of like, if you're the black guy at the Republican convention, you get a lot of attention because the Republicans, we just need more blacks. It's the same way if you're in dissident spheres, if you have a woman that's based, especially if she's pretty, all the guys are going to fall over themselves in it. Let's see here. And then we'll wrap up with this guy. I think this guy was a pimp, right? Literally a pimp. Andrew Tate. Sex is for making children. Well, that's one of the reasons, yeah. Any man who has sex with woman because it feels good is gay. Well, you do it more than just it feels good. It's a way to help bond with someone, right? It's not just, if it's just about making children, then it's something, you don't even need to do sex in. You could just get your sperm and put it in the woman, right? Or right when you put it in the woman, ejaculate as quickly as possible and don't even bother kissing or anything. That would get you pregnant. In fact, if you are 40 with less than 5 children, you're probably gay. All right, he's probably trolling. I guess he's saying I'm gay. I have 2 kids. So if you're 40 and you have less than 5 kids, you're gay. And I get it. Andrew Tate, I don't think he really necessarily believes this. This is a way to get a rise out of people. That's how he makes his money. I get it. But then some people take it seriously, and then it kind of derails them a little bit. All right. So that was kind of my notes on all this cat fights that's been going on in the internet about the whole relationship of women, what they belong in the conservative online politics. And in my view is that women are an important part of our society. They are not the enemy. They need to be treated well. The Bible lays out the hierarchy where a woman needs to submit to a husband, but it doesn't stop there. There's another verse right after that men are supposed to love their wives as Christ loved the church. So, and how big is Christ's love? So, men, we need to love our wives and be grateful and be kind and loving and not be, get in this burqa, bitch, and it's time for me to impregnate you, bitch. Shut up. You don't need to learn to read. And that's not biblical. That is not the Western tradition. That is something that came out of a troll culture that some people, especially if they have Asperger's or they're autistic, they take real. And that creates a very, it creates a divide that shouldn't be there. We're in a serious situation with our people, and we can't look at the other sex as being the enemy. Now, that doesn't mean that we support feminism or all of that type of thing. Believe me, we don't. But it doesn't mean that women are the enemy. It's sort of like generational politics. Like, oh, boomers are the enemy or Zoomers are stupid. I mean, yeah, everyone likes to have fun. And believe me, I like make jokes about women too. But in a serious nature, we all need to get this through together. And women have strengths that men don't have. Men have strengths that women don't have. And together we work a lot better together. So that's what we need to do. That's kind of my view of that. Let's see here. I think that's kind of what I had to say. Here we go. $20, real truth. If America is finished, is there a point for voting for Trump? What comes next? Violent civil war? What is the point of all this? If America is finished, is there a point to voting for Trump? Yeah, there is, because it could help out for the short term a little bit. I'm not the one that thinks worse is better. Worse is usually worse. I'm also a realist, though. So let me go back, and I know I'm probably overusing this analogy, but the Titanic sinking, it'd be like, oh, okay, it's sinking. We're not going to save the ship, but hey, here's some ideas that we can keep the ship floating a little bit longer. Well, it's worth it because you can save people. Maybe you get more time to get other ships to rescue you, whatever. So if you did have ideas to keep the ship afloat as long as you can, even though you know there's no hope in the long run, it does have value. And I see Trump as having that. And as I often bring up, a lot of people say, well, there's no value in voting. Republicans are just like the Democrats. Yeah, Republicans are very disappointing. And you know how hard I came against Asa Hutchinson, for example. He was the governor of Arkansas, total cuck to Israel. You know, he's the guy that wore the Israeli flag, all that type of stuff. Israel first over America. But when he was governor of Arkansas, he kept Arkansas open. We didn't have mandatory mask bullshit. We didn't have lockdowns. And that made a difference in my life. So that's an example of having a Republican in versus a Democrat made a real difference. And in some states, like in Arkansas, if someone breaks in my property in the house, I can legally shoot him to death. Other states, you can't. If someone breaks in my house and squats, I call the police and they're removed. California and New York, they get to keep the house. So there is a point to vote. It does make a difference. But I just don't want to give you the idea that if we get Trump in, oh, we're going back to 1985. We're back to 1985. Everything's great. It's not going to happen. Trump can give us some time. That's all he can do. But, you know, I don't even look at this as black pilled. It's just what's happening because I don't really care. I loved America, but the old America is already gone. What's running the government now is this weird, it has nothing to do with America. It's a combination of Zionism, of Bolshevism, is perverted, is Weimar Germany-ish. It's not America. So I have no loyalty to this government. And the old America, some of it remains the people and so forth, and I love, don't get me wrong, but this government is hopelessly corrupt, and a lot of the people are. And eventually it will break financially, if nothing else. There's nothing, you know, this is out of control at this point. But out of the, you know, it's the myth of the phoenix. Out of the death springs up something great. And something great will come to replace it. I have no doubt, or people will continue. And I think there'll be a lot of lessons learned, like, we can't let these people in if we're going to have a good society, or we can't tolerate this bullshit. So I think we can, we're kind of planting the seeds for the future generation so they can sit in the shade, right? So, yeah, old men plant seeds so the young men can sit in the shade. That's kind of the way it is. And that's how we got to look at things. So I'm not saying this black pill, but I try to be realistic. So it's not like, that should happen. All right. Let's see here. So good question though. So I don't want to black pill you guys, and I hope you guys are doing great. It's been a really fun show. I usually just go an hour, went about an hour and a half. Tomorrow is Thursday, and we go back to the Ramsey Paul show at 11, and hopefully Rumble is working again. And I'll be back on Rumble too. And we'll go back to the usual show. Ramsey Paul show, I go over the news of the day. Like, we'll cover all these riots on college campuses and Greg Abbott arresting people for anti-Semitism. There's really crazy shit's happening. So we'll go through all that. But guys, thanks for being here. It's been a fun show. Thank you for all your support. And I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.